Hello everyone, Volfey here. Sunwell has been a blast, literally, so far. We battled dragons and demons, lizards and then some more undead dragons, which were all huge. This also officially covers the first part of Sunwell phase, the bosses outside of the building itself, like a garden. With the help of Gods extinguishing fires, we gain access to complex inside, guarded by some new trash mobs and twin sisters of fire and shadow, which we are gonna cover today, and then go over those trash mobs that will give you another chance of dropping patterns, sun modes, gear and other useful stuff, so stay tuned for that. But without further ado, let's smash the subscribes and thumbs up button, use your consumables, and let's roll. Cold truth about this encounter is that it's going to be really freaking hard, especially on healers, so I suggest start thinking which DPS is gonna have to gear healing off spec or just straight up change character. That's the guild's internal problem to solve, but nonetheless try to make it a shaman. It's the best case scenario, one elemental or enhancement going resto or both of them. With two entities in this fight you need to have 3 tanks to tank both sisters. FYI, they are demons, so physicals use demon slings. Let's cover the Shadow Twin first. Melee damage is not as important as other abilities, but count on the fact that Sacrilege is a dual wielder like Brutalis. Dark Touched is the debuff put on a player after receiving any kind of damage or shadow damage from Sacrilege. It decreases healing received by 5% and stacks 20 times to 100% healing received decreased. Receiving any kind of fire damage clears this debuff, until the next application. Shadow Blades does about 3000 physical damage and applies a dot debuff called Dark Strike, which deals about 450 shadow damage over 10 seconds and can stack up to 5 times, with every new stack resetting the timer. Shadow Images are small, untargetable copies of Sacrilege that have a very short lifespan. They run to random players and do an insignificant amount of melee damage. Apart from all of that, they use Shadow Fury, which deals about 2000 shadow damage and stuns nearby players for 2 seconds. It can be devastating if all healers get stunned. Doesn't mean wipe necessarily, but it's tight squeeze moment for sure, if you know what I mean. Shadow Nova is an ability casted on a random member on Fire Twins threat table every 30 seconds. It deals about 3500 shadow damage to that player and everyone around that player in 10 yards radius. It's quite welcoming damage when you have too many stacks of fire, and we will mention it in a minute. Confounding Blow as the latest and quite important ability is the reason why you need 2 tanks for this twin sister. It is used every 25-ish seconds, deals about 8000 shadow damage, and disorients the tank for 6 seconds, ignores tank's aggro and goes to the second player on the threat meter, which should be the second tank. After those 6 seconds, boss stops ignoring main tank's aggro and goes back to him or her if the tank's aggro is still lower. Otherwise, boss continues attacking the off tank until the next confounding blow. Now for Fire Twin, Grand Warlock something. Just call her Fire Twin. She has much simpler abilities but quite devastating and important to deal with. First of all, Pyrogenics is self-buff that increases fire damage done by 30%. With this, Fire Tank can get gibbed hard, and the best way to deal with it is to preferably spell steal it by Fire Mage or purge or remove in any way you can. Flame Touched is a fire version of the stackable debuff, but this time it deals fire damage every second. It can stack up to 20 and deal 6000 damage every second. It can get cleared by taking shadow damage from either of the twins, since it happens in phase 2 as well. Blaze is the spam ability she uses on fire tanks since she is not moving ever. Blaze hits for about 6000 fire damage and leaves a patch of fire on the ground that deals about 2500 fire damage in 2 yards radius. They are not as much of a detriment if put in proper places for Shadow Twin tanks to use if they get too many Shadow Touch debuff, but we will mention it in a minute. Flameseer is casted on random 3 to 5 players and gives them debuff that deals about 650 fire damage every half second for a total of 7,800 for the 6 second duration of the debuff. It has to be intensively healed. Lastly, but not the least, Conflagration is the mechanic everybody has to learn to deal with. It doesn't even matter if you die alone from a debuff, but as long as you don't affect others with it. Basically, the target is picked from the Shadow Twin threat table between number 3 and 11. Or according to some other sources, between 3 and the rest, but most likely it will be a DPS, just ignoring the 2 tanks. That's why it's important to control your aggro as a DPS. Conflag deals 1.6 fire damage every second and confuses the player leaving it wandering around. Any other player in 8 yards radius will be affected as well. Enrage timer is 6 minutes, which is decently long since this is not a DPS race and no healer can constantly cast for 6 minutes straight. So faster you kill it the better, but keep an eye on your aggro meter. Strategy and tactic. From what I saw, many guilds will be using the ledge strat. It is a high risk and high reward kind of tactic. Basically raid stacks on the right side next to the right pillar-like looking objects. Yeah, anyway, kiss it like literally. 3 tanks, melee and hunter pets are on the lower level taking huge amounts of damage. The tactic relies on RNG of Shadow Nova being casted timely on both ranged and healers on higher level and on melees and tanks on the lower level of the room. Before engaging the boss, you need to beat the ledge boss, otherwise your guild will go ballistic if you fail that. You need to jump on the pretty rounded edge of the ledge and not fall down into the twins' bedroom. There are 2 ways to do it as I see it. One is to be experienced and just run to it and jump timely, releasing W. Other one for those less courageous is to toggle walk by pressing slash by default and then slowly walking on it under the angle. More important than that is to toggle off the walking so you can run out the comp flag. This will happen very often, don't worry, sometimes it's funny as hell. Anyway, when everybody is in position, let the fire tank pull twin first, then quickly empty shadow twin to the main tank and the off tank, depending how good their threat is, and just cycle the empties to the off tank during the fight. DPS can go instantly after that, but again, don't over aggro the off tank. Melees and tank are gonna soak a lot of shadow damage from the shadow images, while shadow images running to the raid on the higher level of the room will disappear before reaching them on the ledge due to the weird padding. If phase 1 goes well, phase 2 is pretty much just tank and spam, kill and collect loot. The difference in difficulty between the 2 phases is pretty massive. Once shadow twin is dead, raid jumps down carefully so they don't land in a blaze patch, stack behind a static fire twin, and DPS and heal. In phase 2, 90% of the job is on the fire tank, but it's decently easy. Leave patches in circle, run and stack inside the raid when she is casting Shadow Nova to clear fire dot stacks, and GG. Hunter cycle MDs into the fire tank in phase 2. Fight isn't necessarily hard in theory, but it falls back to the handling personal mechanics, RNG of debuffs and strength of your healers. There are a lot of damage sources along with conflag mechanic. Speaking of which, let's talk about how to handle it. As a ranged DPS, you target the proper twin, the shadow one, start DPSing, turn the camera towards the door or the assigned conflag spot and just look at the aggro table and DBM timers. Conflag and Shadow Nova are coming every 15 seconds alternately, which means conflag comes every 30 seconds. If you see your name, you can just press both mouse buttons to run in that direction instantly. You get hit by it, you use your PvP trinket to clear confusion debuff and go back to the ledge carefully. For melees on the lower level, the assigned spot will be, well, where you assign it to be. Most usually it's just under the raid ledge so healers can see you, reach you, and where you wouldn't conflag other melee or tanks. Take conflag, use a trinket, or bubble and ice block works as well, and go back to DPSing. For rogues and warriors, keep in mind that threat transfers to phase 2, so if you cleave both twins in phase 1, you might get threat capped in phase 2, over aggro fire tank and wipe the raid. Health of fire twin resets on phase transition anyway. Kill order doesn't matter, but it's better idea to kill shadow first, since that way fire twin will stop casting conflag and start using Shadow Nova. If we kill fire twin first, shadow will start using conflag along with requiring 2 tanks, plus it's harder to keep a high threat as a fire tank. Speaking of fire tanking, it's an important role that a warlock or protection paladin should assume. Get a lot of fire resistance and stamina, while keeping up a nice amount of spell damage and spell hit rating, of course, to upkeep your threat. Leave fire patches in circular order, but keep one fire patch close to the tanks and DPSers so they can reset their shadow debuff by just quickly walking in and out of fire patch. Healers need to spam a lot, don't underestimate any damaging ability, cause RNG can spike it. For example, shadow images can reach you and stun you for 2 seconds, this allowing you to heal, or raise the stacks, or just run conflag altogether. In that case, it's better to use your trinket to clear Shadow Fury stun, and just die from conflag outside of the raid. It's a small chance, but it can happen. Resto Shamans never stop using Chain Heal. COH will have to use a lot of Flash Heal and Binding Heal, and Circle of Healing in between. Druids will be on tank hodding and someone else, like yourself and some other healer perhaps. Holy Paladins should focus on the fire tank only and spam fat holy lights, never flash. Stay calm, do your best, practice and you will eventually kill the boss. Use demon slaying and use bloodlust after the first conflag. Drop the threat and don't over aggro. GG, you got yourself a lot of loot. One last interesting fact is that back in the original game there was a time when a Warlock's Hellfire ability used to clear shadow stacks. Fun times. Anyway, let's go over trash mobs you will encounter on the way to the Twins room. There are quite a few repeating, but just turn them away from the raid for cleave and pick up rogues. Shadow Sword Vanquisher is the improved version of Vindicator from before, but does not use Mortal Strike. Apart from cleave, they deal huge melee damage and use Melt Armor, which reduces the tank armor by 2k for 30 seconds. Shadow Sword Mana Fiend is a caster type of mob that does AoE Arcane Explosion that deals less than 2000 arcane damage, also drains about 3000 mana from mana users and can apply Chilling Touch with melee hits. Shadow Sword Life Shaper is the healer and anti-healer of the group. Life Drain can be dispelled from the tank and health funnel should be interruptible, easy to deal with. Shadow Sword Soulbinder is a warlock type of mob, has cleave ability and must be turned away from the melees. Other than that, it can charm and dominate random player for 5 seconds. Perfect for trolling and killing your own raiders. Also, it can spawn an additional demon mob, Felguard Slayer, with normal abilities and Blazing Infernal with normal abilities. These mobs can be enslaved by warlocks for a nice damage boost. Shadow Sword Assassin is a rogue and hunter at the same time. Can put up a hunter's mark and aim shot you without healing debuff. It starts off as stealthed but easy to spot with flare. It can use Shadow Step as well if it gets stunned or CC'd in any way. Shadow Sword Commander is a warrior type, Sunwell Protection with shield and shield bash ability that only deals some damage, but it can buff other mobs with battle shouts, so take it 15 plus yards away from other mobs just to make it easier. Anyway, that's about it. Twins will be painful to progress, but you can do it. Just make sure to target the proper twin on the pull. Thanks for checking out the video and giving it a thumbs up. I have been quite busy lately with work and finally managed to get some time to make and release a video. Stay safe and have fun playing the game in Sunwell. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.